Hi, fourth graders. As we continue studying about the Northeast region, it's important for us to learn about the population and life in the Northeast. And so that's what we are going to talk about today is how people live in the Northeast region. And so when we hear that word population density, we're thinking, what does that mean? And that means that it's measuring how many people live in a given amount of land. And that affects the way that people live. And so I want you to turn and tell your neighbor or your pet or your grown-up, whoever is there with you, or your pillow or your stuffed animal, and tell them, what do you think the difference is between Olathe, Kansas and New York City in New York? What is the difference? So pause and come back when you're ready. All right, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hopefully you were able to discuss with your neighbor about the differences between Olathe, Kansas and a big city like New York. And that's what we're going to look at today. And so as we're looking at that and we see this map, this is from our social studies book, we see a few things. First, I noticed the key down here. Now this is really important in helping me understand this population density map. And as I see these different colors, here, I see they also match on my map here. And so I am going to start looking, and I want you to look and see if you can circle the area that has the most dense population. If it's the most dense, that means there's the most people. And I'm looking at my key and I see, well, if it's yellow, there are 0 to 7 people per square mile. So that is a low population. As I look up at this red color, it says over 3,000 people per square mile. So I know that my red color is going to have the most dense population, the most people for this space. And I see, look right here, friends. Here it is in the Northeast region. Here is my most dense population. And you know where this is? If you guessed New York City, you're right. This state here is New York. And this coming right down here, this little tail is our island of Manhattan, and that's New York City. It also has a few areas of New Jersey, I see in red, a little spot here in Pennsylvania. I also see this spot here in red, and you know what? I know from remembering yesterday as we studied Washington, D.C., that that spot in Maryland is Washington, D.C., and so it has a very dense population. Now, when I think about the population, I want to know what caused so many people to come to the Northeast region. And so when I think about that, we know that factories caused a lot of growth for the Northeast. And so even way back in the early 1800s, the Northeast area was filled with factories, and many of them focused on making cotton cloth. And here you can see a picture of a mill, that's what they called them at that time, and how it worked. And so mill owners would build new factories. They kept building and they needed more workers. But you know what? They had a dilemma. They ran out of workers and they ran out of men workers. So what did they do? They hired thousands of women. This became a time, friends and fourth graders, when women weren't able to work out of the home much. They stayed home doing things. And so having this opportunity to go out and to work brought a lot of independence to women in that time period. And so many of the cotton mills and factories in the Northeast were filled with women workers. Now, life in the Northeast is still a little bit different. Some of the Northeast is full of those big cities like we looked at. It has that dense population. But you know what? A lot of the Northeast is also full of rural areas. Another name for rural areas is like the country, small towns. And so as I look at pictures, I see things like apartments. Oh, and the air in this picture, it looks so polluted, friends. I see lots of big cities and subways and buses. Life in the big city. But life in the rural area still looks different. They have homes and yards. There's smaller stores. It looks nice and clean in the air and water. Now, you would have seen these pictures, friends, as you read earlier today from your textbook, and you were able to see and compare life in the big city versus life in a rural area. You've already read about that, and so you're experts, I know, on the difference between life in the big city and in the rural area. Now, if you forgot to read earlier today, pause this video, go read in your social studies book, find part 1 on Seesaw, and finish that. Then come back. But if you've already read and you're ready to move on, here's your job today. You are going to be comparing the different parts of life in the Northeast. And so you're going to use the information from earlier. If you want to get your social studies book back out or pull that up from earlier as I read that to you, you may, and that might help you as you complete the table. Here's an important part on the next slide. You are going to answer questions in a table. For each section, I need you to include 2 to 3 details to answer each part. I do not want one sentence or one word, friends. We've talked about that in 4th grade, using complete sentences to answer those questions. So I will show you how I did that first one. So this is what you will find on Seesaw. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections that you read about. And in those 5 sections, you heard about life in the big city and in a rural town. And so you're going to answer questions for both of those. So here's an example. Where do people live? And I gave you the page number where you can find that information. And so I said in a complete sentence, in big cities, people live in apartment buildings. There's one detail. Because they are so close to each other, 2 details, they're close to each other. It can be noisy. There's my 3 details that I got from my reading. And it tells me about where people live in a big city. So your job, friends, is to complete the rest of that table. Remember, it all is from your social studies textbook, and so you can use that to help you answer those questions. All right, friends, good luck on finishing up that table.